Hello and welcome to Automobilista 2. A new update has just released, so we're up to version 0.9 now in the beta and things are getting close to full release. The Sigma P1 and Kyalami have just dropped, so I thought that we'd jump in and check it out in a 10-lap race. We're racing the P1s, P2s, P3s and Ultima race cars in this race. The Ultimas should be relatively evenly matched with the P2s. They're a lot quicker in a straight line, but theoretically slower in the corners. It probably doesn't play out that way in this race as much. But sitting here, I thought that we'd have a review of the car, the track, where it's at, what the racing's like, what the AI is like. And you'll see from the start that there was a bit of a snafu on the start where a couple of cars didn't get a great launch and we had to avoid that, but beyond that things are pretty stable around this track. We do get punted once and we do have another spin, which is just a byproduct of the handling of the car and driver error, not anything that the car had done wrong. So we'll get to that later in the video. You'll see what happens. The Sigma P1, it's a really interesting car. It's quite powerful relative to the other P2s. It's a lot heavier though. So in practicing and in driving both, I found that I was a second to a second and a half quicker in the other P2 versus the Sigma P1. But the Sigma P1's a lot more controllable. You can slide it, you can catch it a little bit more, it drifts a little bit more, there's a bit more play in the steering. It's quite a forgiving car. But really good to drive in a race like this that goes for a little while. I could see a lot of league racing running this car, running multi-class races with the P1s. This is the primary P2 for anyone who's sort of new and learning their way around. The other P2 is great fun to drive as well. And the P3 is not much challenge for these guys, but if you have a look at the timing tree over on the left, you see that the P3s are absolutely missing it with the P2s, which to me is really interesting. And from the stats, I suppose, of these cars, their power figures and their weight figures, I'd expect the P2s to be a little bit more clearly faster, but I'm happy for both classes to be even. Like, it creates some fun racing. What's going on in Brazilian motorsport right now is really interesting as a whole. There's a lot of new engineering, a lot of new development. It reminds me a lot of Formula One in, say, the early 90s, maybe even late 80s, where there were individuals with a bit of money and a bit of backing who have just said, we're going to build a race car, which is great. So you've wound up with, your Fittipaldi, which isn't a race car, it's probably more of a track day car, releasing a couple of years ago. You've got the new car that's going to come into, I think it's going to be P1, which is Tasso Marquez's car that he's developed. It's really something to keep an eye on. It's exciting. There's, whether it's by virtue of rules and regulations being a little bit looser, that you can develop these cars that'll be competitive, or whether it's just that interest and there's more factors at play, I'm not sure. But definitely something you keep an eye on. And if Riser and AMS can keep putting in these new cars as they're developed and released in Brazil, there you see the punt. Brutal. Very upset with this. Very upset with that, but what are you going to do? In any case, if Riser and AMS can keep putting these new cars that are releasing in Brazil and being developed in Brazil into games like AMS2, I think it creates this real niche product that's really interesting for the motorheads out there and the guys and girls who just live and breathe racing and want something interesting. Already you've got the unique tracks, which I think there's a real appeal. There's a real appeal to league racing. AMS1 obviously was highly moddable. This maybe not as much. We'll see what happens down the path. But there's a lot to keep you in here and a lot to be interested in. So moving on to Kyalami as a track. Hey, and we've just dive bombed there. That's the red mist descending, wanting to get a little bit further up the field. Kyalami in AMS2, massive crash on the side there. You'll see that we've brought up a different HUD here that is giving you a lot more idea of tyre temperatures and pressures, your bump travel, your brake temperatures and your tyre pressure, your acceleration curve. What I really like is down in the bottom right here that you've got your power output and your torque output readout, which were both live. So you can see where that peak power point is and that peak torque point is. And when you're in practice, you can learn about the car, learn where your shift points are, rather than just redlining every time and hoping for the best. Moving back now, Kyalami. I think it's really comparable to Soto Corsa Competizione and the version in that. It's like the bump mapping, the feel of the track's quite good. The track itself is a track I've always liked. It's quite tricky, and with the state of South Africa and everything that's been going on politically, financially, economically over there, Kyalami fell by the wayside for a little while. But now with a little bit more development, you've got GT championships running at Kyalami again, so it's becoming a little bit more prominent. And coming back to the world stage from back in its Formula 1 days. There's the historic version of Kyalami, of course, in AMS2 as well, which is a ripper of a track with an amazing straight, and fully recommend racing Group C's around there. The Historic Sim Racing Organisation had a race in Group C's around there probably about a year ago now, and that was an absolute blast for the people who ran it. I think that there's a lot to like here, a lot to like at Kyalami. The track objects are really good. As a byproduct of the engine, it's a really immersive experience driving around this track in this sim. I like it a lot. The HUD elements, I'm liking the tree up on the left. There's some things that still need to be worked out. This game's still in beta, not expecting the absolute world from it at the moment. You can see the Project Cars 2 infrastructure around HUD elements and the hierarchy. You can move elements around. They're fully customizable. Not all the features are fully in there yet, so you're, again, down the bottom right, the telemetry there, that's the most that you can get and get a reliable readout at this stage, but I'd expect that to go into a full version similar to Project Cars 2 that gives a readout similar to that telemetry overlay we had up earlier. So really liking what's going on there, and the new force feedback model that Riser have released is interesting. So, deleted the setting file. I've deleted the full Automobilista file from the My Documents folder, just to see if that made any difference. And I'm finding the old force feedback settings have more detail for me. So I'm on a Thrustmaster TS300. And there just seems to be that little bit more detail in the curb texture, a little bit more detail in road bumps, versus the new force feedback, which is a little bit more floaty, maybe a little bit more controllable, but seems to lack that really detailed feedback, that the car's getting unsettled or things like that. So it's quite interesting playing around with that, and I expect it to. Obviously, I expect it to improve a lot more, be a lot more refined when the full version finally releases. Now, time is gradually getting on. We've got 6 laps to go in this one. I think it's on the next lap we have a bit of a spin because we lose a place. Just trying to get that back. I'm trying to get the power down a little bit too early coming out through the S's. So I'll leave it here and rejoin you back towards the end of this race. So heading on to the final lap now, and we've been battling with this P3 for a couple of laps. It's been a great race with this car. I've really enjoyed it. Both the Sigma and the P3 that we've been battling with, coming into the first left-hander now, switching back on itself, down to second. The tyres are gradually wearing through. We're running out of fuel. It seems to, or AMS2 seems to replicate that really well. The car gradually gets a little bit looser. I played with the brake bias and roll bars just to try and stable things up a little bit as the race went on. But as I say, coming towards the end of the lap now and the end of this race, I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the 10 laps. Enjoyed getting to know the car. Felt really immersed, and I think that's what's going for this game and this sim, is how immersive it is, the enjoyment you're going to get out of it. The force feedback is really quite good, despite there being potentially a little way to go. Full riser there, just to get it a little bit more consistent and figure out whether the old is new and new is old and all that sort of stuff. So with that, if you've enjoyed the video, please subscribe, please like, and leave a comment with your thoughts on AMS2, where it is at the moment, and what you're looking forward to. Potentially a Boxer Cup, who knows? So with that, look after yourselves, stay safe, and we'll see you next video.